This is the one episode in the Vampire Diaries Season 6 that truly moved viewers to tears. Sheriff Forbes, knowing her time is running out, wants to finish the backlog of cases on her desk. The one case that weighs most heavily on her is the car accident involving Elena's parents, as there are still a few unresolved questions. She never considered the possibility of vampires being involved before, but with Damon's presence that night, Sheriff Forbes worries that he might have something to do with the accident. On the other side, in order to help Jeremy get his diploma, Damon had no choice but to compel the principal. Jeremy's grades were truly abysmal, leaving Damon no other option. Caroline took Stefan to the cabin in the outskirts, wanting to make it a warm and peaceful place for her mother to spend her final days in comfort. Sheriff Forbes calls Damon into her office and explains that she wants to solve all her unsolved cases before she retires. Intrigued, Damon offers to help fulfill her last wish.
Also me. This one was me.
Perhaps some of these cold cases really are Damon's doing, or maybe he just doesn't want Sheriff Forbes to have any regrets, so he's willing to take the blame. The final case is the car accident involving Elena's parents. Damon was not willing to take the blame for this, so he swore to Sheriff Forbes that Elena's parents were not killed by him. Sheriff Forbes lays out the suspicions. Before the accident, Elena's mother had left an urgent message for Sheriff Forbes. Also, the couple had taken a longer route that night, and there were no skid marks at the scene. Could this accident have actually been murder? Damon calls in Elena for help. After going over the case files, Elena too is unable to explain these doubts. Meanwhile, after finishing cleaning the cabin, Caroline confides in Stefan that she overheard her mother talking to him. Her implication is that Stefan has always been by her side, and it's because of this reason. Stefan clears up Caroline's misunderstanding with actions, slowly leaning closer to her. They kiss.
One of us should probably say something.
Go for it.
To uncover the truth about her parents' accident, Elena goes to her brother Jeremy to ask about the details of that night. Upon hearing the suspicions, Jeremy can't help but chuckle. The urgent message left for Sheriff Forbes was actually just their parents trying to scare him, because Jeremy had been caught sneaking off to use illegal substances that night. As for why the couple took a longer route and why there were no skid marks at the scene, it was because there had been heavy rain the previous day, washing out the closest road. They had no choice but to take the longer way. When they crossed the bridge, the car slipped and plunged into the river. The mystery is solved. Sheriff Forbes can finally close the case. It's as if a great weight has been lifted from her shoulders, and her strength fades all at once. Elena plans to take Jeremy to the airport, but Alaric steps in, offering to handle the task. He was both Jeremy's mentor and like a father to him, so Elena didn't think much of it. Little does she know that Jeremy and Alaric are deceiving her. Jeremy has no intention of going to college. He plans to continue as a vampire hunter. Not all vampires are good, and the harm they cause is far greater than that of ordinary criminals.
Proud of you, Jeremy.
Hey, do me a favor. If Bonnie ever comes back,
You'll be the first person I call.
Someone has to stop them, and Jeremy is set to follow in Alaric's footsteps. After Damon takes Liz home, she reflects on how she might be one of the few people in town to die of natural causes. This triggers Damon's memories of his late mother, whose funeral he hadn't even attended. Liz wants to make up for Damon's regret and hopes that Damon can write her eulogy.
Only do me a favor, nothing dirty.
no promise.
I'll take that drink now.
Yeah.
I'll be right back. Want rocks or you want neat?
After Damon's call, Caroline rushes to the hospital in a panic. Damon explains that Liz is only in a coma, and the doctors will ensure she passes away comfortably. Caroline couldn't accept it. She had always imagined being by her mother's side for her final moments, but now she didn't even get the chance to say goodbye. Under Stefan's guidance, Caroline creates a warm dream for her mother. In the dream, her mother is teaching young Caroline how to ride a bike. Little Caroline, afraid of falling, begs her mother not to let go, saying she isn't ready, not knowing her mother had already slowly loosened her grip.
Yes, you are.
The dream Caroline created allows Liz to pass away peacefully in happiness. Everyone is filled with grief. Sheriff Forbes had not only been a reliable ally, but had also become family to them. How can a vampire win a woman's heart without using compulsion? Enzo is undoubtedly the most boring vampire in the Vampire Diaries. In order to get revenge on his nemesis, Stefan, Enzo targets Stefan's niece, Sarah, devising an overly dramatic revenge plan. Enzo first forced Matt to flirt with Sarah. Unfortunately, Matt's flirting skills are terrible. Sarah not only easily saw through him, but also told Matt he was a good guy. After Sarah leaves, Enzo appears, berates Matt, and then takes his jacket, wallet, and phone, leaving Matt stranded in an unfamiliar city. Alone and shivering in the cold wind, Matt huddles by himself. When Sarah passed by again, she felt a sense of pity for Matt. Not only does she buy him a hot coffee, but she's also willing to pay for his ride home. This brief encounter forms the foundation of their friendship. Was Enzo trying to set them up with this whole charade? Later that evening, Enzo comes to pick up Matt, who still doesn't understand what Enzo's plan is. It turns out this was Enzo's test. He was using Matt to study Sarah's personality.
She spurned your comically inept attempts to charm her, and yet proved to be a good Samaritan when you needed assistance. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'd say her purity ranks about a 9.5. When I'm through with this, it'll be a 1.
This wasn't about building her up. Enzo's true goal was to lead Sarah astray, to tarnish the bright, shining jewel that Stefan held dear. Enzo wouldn't use compulsion on Sarah. He wanted to corrupt her willingly. Enzo was really going to great lengths to get revenge on Stefan. Afterward, Sarah shows up at Matt's bar. This coincidence was also orchestrated by Enzo, further deepening the friendship between Matt and Sarah. Not long after, Matt receives another order from Enzo. This time, Enzo wants Matt to take Sarah to a remote road. It's time for Enzo to take center stage in his revenge plot. Matt has no choice but to comply, as Enzo has threatened his mother's life. So, under the pretense of a photo shoot, Matt lures Sarah to the secluded road. Nervously, Matt glances around, terrified that Enzo might appear and harm Sarah. Just then, Enzo calls Matt and instructs him to take 2 steps to the left. Matt, confused, instinctively takes 2 steps, and in the next moment he's struck by a speeding car, the driver fleeing the scene. With no one else around, Sarah helplessly shouts for help. At that moment, Enzo arrives, playing the part of a concerned bystander. Sarah quickly turns to him for assistance. Matt, barely conscious, is unable to speak. If he could, he'd be cursing Enzo. Enzo appears to make a difficult decision, comforting Sarah, telling her to stay calm no matter what she sees next. Black veins appear under Enzo's eyes, and his irises glow blood red as he bites into his wrist and pours his blood into Matt's mouth. A miracle happens. The wounds on Matt's body begin to heal as the vampire blood takes effect. In a flash, Enzo disappears without a trace, not even leaving his name behind. What Sarah witnessed today completely shattered her worldview, planting a seed of curiosity deep inside her. Since Caroline's mother's death, everyone has been staying with her, scattered across the living room, sleeping wherever they could. When Caroline woke up, she found Damon had been up all night writing the eulogy. It's rare to see him take something this seriously, because Damon was thinking about his own late mother. Bonded by shared pain, Damon offers Caroline some heartfelt comfort, telling her that they'll all be there to help her through the hardest time of her life. The next day, Caroline put aside her grief and assigned everyone tasks to prepare for her mother's funeral. As Damon was selecting a suit, he couldn't help but recall his mother's funeral. He had helped his younger brother with his tie, and Stefan had claimed he wouldn't cry because their mother had visited him the night before. Damon had simply assumed it was just a nice dream. Stefan's teasing interrupted Damon's memory. He had come to his brother for advice. After kissing Caroline, things between them had stalled after Sheriff Forbes' death. Now that he has calmed down, he doesn't know how to deal with it. Damon was clearly intrigued.
Pull the ripcord.
Seeing Stefan's hesitation, Damon offered his advice. Not all love is true love. If what Stefan felt for Caroline wasn't, then it might be time to bail out.
Let her have today.
Caroline confided in Elena about kissing Stefan. She had wanted to talk to him and define their relationship, but she was afraid that her mother's death might add a layer of pity to their feelings. Elena's advice was to wait until tomorrow to discuss it.
I think I need to know today.
With the funeral approaching, Damon still hadn't finished his eulogy. He once again reflected on his mother's funeral. Young Stefan had accused him of not speaking at the service.
You could have just said goodbye.
Now, Damon began writing in earnest. While Caroline was spending some time alone with her mother, Stefan came to find her. He looked like he was about to say something, which was like a sign that he was about to give a goodie card. Remembering his brother's warning, Stefan decided to wait until tomorrow to say anything. But to Caroline, tomorrow was just a way to politely reject her. Stefan simply didn't want to add to her pain, which is why he was being so gentle. The funeral began, and a drunken Tyler was stopped at the door by Matt. Showing up in that state was disrespectful to both Sheriff Forbes and Caroline. Tyler really was hopeless. After the officiant spoke about Sheriff Forbes' achievements, all the officers stood up solemnly. Caroline's look of shock showed that this hadn't been part of the planned ceremony. The police department was sending their leader off with full honors in a hero's farewell. This moment was truly heartbreaking.
Calling Sheriff Forbes. This is the last call for Sheriff Forbes. No response. Radio number 26 is out of service after 12 years and 4 months of police service. Gone, but never forgotten.
Matt's eyes filled with tears as he looked on with heartfelt admiration. Next, Damon stepped up to deliver his speech. As the last person to be with Sheriff Forbes, he passed along the things she hadn't had the chance to say to her daughter.
She said you were extraordinary. And you are. And so is she. Liz was a hero to this town. She was a hero to all of you. And she was a hero to me.
When Damon gets serious, he's truly captivating. Finally, Caroline thanked the guests and sang a song she had prepared for her mother, hoping she would rest in peace.
Day is done, go in grace. Let us go into the dark, safely to arrive at home.
At the reception, Caroline effortlessly greeted and chatted with the guests, managing to smile here and there. This is the sadness of adulthood, the pain and sorrow hidden deep inside. This hero's funeral gave Matt a sense of direction in his life. He decided he wanted to become a police officer. Matt brought 2 police academy applications with him, hoping Tyler would also pull himself together. When the gathering ended, Caroline planned to head home and declined Elena's offer to accompany her. She wanted to make it through the day on her own, believing that everything would start to get better after this. But Elena was worried and secretly followed her. Meanwhile, Stefan sought out his brother for a heart-to-heart. He admitted that Damon was wrong. While he wasn't sure if what he felt for Caroline was true love, he hoped their relationship could grow into something better. In fact, before the funeral, Stefan had been planning to confess his feelings to Caroline, but it hadn't been the right time for that kind of talk. Once home, Caroline found the empty house even more lonely, and missed her mother more than ever. When Elena appeared, it annoyed her. Elena had sensed something was off with Caroline during the reception. Caroline had been holding herself together, but the more she repressed her emotions, the closer she came to breaking down. Caroline wanted to turn off her humanity so she could block out all the pain. Elena, having been through this before, tried desperately to talk her out of it. Caroline felt it was unfair. Elena, Stefan and Damon had all turned off their humanity at some point, so why couldn't she? But there are no what-ifs. Elena pulled Caroline into her arms, trying to use her companionship to change Caroline's mind, but to her surprise, Caroline snapped her neck.
That's not your choice to make.
Caroline turned off her humanity. Stefan was too late after all. Meanwhile, Bonnie finally escaped from the prison world. Her escape was full of danger and excitement. Day instantly turned to night, scorching heat gave way to freezing cold, and a solar eclipse accompanied by the northern lights added a touch of wonder to Bonnie's legendary return. On day 278 of being trapped in the prison world, Bonnie found a magical stone from her ancestors to replenish her power. By noon, when the eclipse appeared, she would be able to go home. At the same time, in the real world, Joe had been feeling nauseous and vomiting frequently. Alaric assumed it was because of his terrible cooking. Just then, Kai showed up. In just a few days, he looked much older, and the wicked charm he once had was gone. Kai's body was failing. He was supposed to merge with Joe, but since he had forced a merge with Luke, his body had developed a defect. As the leader of the Gemini Coven, the lives of all its members were tied to Kai. Joe examined Kai, and from a medical perspective, there didn't seem to be anything wrong with him. Suddenly, Kai started coughing up blood. In his panic, he grabbed Joe's arm, and when her magic flowed into his body, his condition began to improve. Kai realized that his merge with Luke had failed, and only Joe's magic was a perfect match for him. Alaric immediately stepped in to protect his girlfriend. Kai explained that his soul had already merged with Luke's, so all he needed was Joe's magic. He assured them it wouldn't hurt her. Moreover, as the leader of the Gemini Coven, if Kai died, all the prison worlds would collapse. Alaric suddenly realized, was there more than one prison world?
Has no one ever mentioned that?
In the prison world, Bonnie reached the tunnel. She was ready, but just as the eclipse was about to happen, the ground began to shake violently. Day turned to night, and Bonnie rushed back to the surface to see what was going on. She found herself in a snow-covered frozen landscape with a dazzling display of the northern lights above her and a castle in the distance. It was breathtaking. Inside the castle, Bonnie discovered a journal. The journal detailed that this world was stuck on a single day in 1903, with the northern lights endlessly repeating, much like the eclipse cycle in Bonnie's prison world. This was another prison world. As Bonnie explored the castle, she stumbled upon a photo of the Salvatore brothers. They looked young and innocent, not yet vampires. Could this castle be their home? The reason the two prison worlds were merging was because Kai had grown weaker. For the greater good of her coven, Joe had no choice but to transfer all of her magic to Kai. Meanwhile, Bonnie's aurora-filled prison began to quake. When she opened the door, she was back in the eclipse world, and now she had to make it back to the real world before the eclipse ended. The two prison worlds kept switching back and forth. Bonnie hurried back to the tunnel and began her spell. She had to catch the eclipse at just the right moment. Suddenly, a woman appeared in the tunnel. She looked elegant and refined, likely the prisoner trapped in the aurora-filled world. As Bonnie ascended back to reality, the sibling merge was complete. Kai had finally achieved the full merge. He congratulated his sister, then leaned in and whispered a few words into her ear.
Have a good life, sissy.
Kai left satisfied, but Alaric was curious about what he had said. It turns out Joe's nausea wasn't caused by Kai at all.
You said I'm pregnant.
Alaric was going to be a father, and he immediately pulled out a ring he'd been carrying and proposed to Joe. It was a double celebration. When Damon returned home, he found someone had made pancakes for him. Who else could it be but Bonnie? Damon opened his arms, and Bonnie excitedly leaped into his embrace. Their friendship had truly transcended life and death. Later, Bonnie showed him the photo of the Salvatore brothers she had brought back from the aurora-filled prison world. She also showed him footage she'd recorded of the woman she had encountered before her escape. Damon let out a gasp of disbelief. So, who exactly is that woman? Follow me and I'll reveal the answer in the next episode.